Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 132 of the Last Round Podcast, coming off a Mayweather event. He's 44 years old and still going strong as he fights one of the Paul brothers in Logan Paul from Miami, Florida, on Showtime pay-per-view. And I know some of our listeners might be pissed off because we're talking about it, but it was boxing. There was boxing fights on the undercard. Mayweather is arguably, I wouldn't even say arguably, the biggest star the sport has produced, at least in the last 10, 15 years. So it is what it is. But we'll start with fight reviews for this week. This past Saturday, the 5th of June, from Telford International Center. And is that how you say it, Mike? Telford?
Telford, yeah.
On ESPN Plus, Dynamite, Daniel Dubois is back after suffering his first loss last year to Joe Joyce. He gets the second round KO over Bogdan-Dinu, who suffers a third loss of his career. Dubois gets the vacant WBA interim heavyweight title. We're off a loss? He's getting the WBA vacant title? Tell me how that happens, Mike. Tell me how that happens.
Right. He picks up a WBA interim world title where Joe Joyce is still waiting for his number one contendership shot against Usyk, which was probably going to be the WBO champion anyway. So I don't know. The good old WBA get involved and looking for their slice of the pie.
Yeah, I mean, it happens with all these sanctioning bodies, give or take. But I mean, it's good that he's back in the ring. Obviously, suffering your first loss, especially with somebody as much hype as he had last year, or even before last year, but leading up to that fight with Joe Joyce. I know he got some criticism because of his eye, and there was that whole controversy that he quit and all that stuff. But I'm glad that he's back in it because, sometimes we've seen fighters take their first loss and they don't come back for over a year, and sometimes, longer than that. So I'm glad he came back. Obviously, he was a heavy favorite here, and obviously Frank Warren was able to weasel the WBA vacant heavyweight interim title into there to kind of give him some legitimacy and some standing. But I like Dubois. I'm a fan. Even though he did lose to Joe Joyce. He's still, 23, 24? He's still a really young guy in his early 20s. So he's shown that he can fight. And I think there's still a lot of investment to do in his career. And I think Frank Warren and the fans know that. So obviously this was just a get back to it fight, for lack of a better term, just to get him back in the win column, to get him another significant payday, another significant event. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously good to see him back in there after losing to Joe Joyce. I thought I watched a lot of the fight week promos and the interviews on the Boxing Social, and some of those behind the scenes videos that they were doing now that he's training with Shane McGuigan, and I thought he looked a little bit nervous going in there. And I think once he got the win in the second round, you could see that it kind of lifted all that pressure off of his shoulders because he's back in the win column, he's back in the ring, probably got his confidence back after doing that. But I just don't know whether throwing him in there for a WBA interim heavyweight title is that good? Doesn't he need to really kind of build again? I understand that obviously the next one up from this is the WBA, I don't know, world champion or whatever it's classed as, which is obviously Manuel Cha. I think even now, I think Daniel Dubois would just be too young, too strong, too quick for Manuel Cha. But
Manuel Char's coming off the biggest win of his career against One Shot.
That's very true. That's very true. So, obviously he's going through a bit of a purple patch himself, is Manuel Charr getting that win over one shot. But, like you said, I think he's young enough. Take your time. Just, maybe get out there, fight a few kind of easy fights just to...
So are you saying that you wouldn't agree? You're not in the camp where you would put him in a spot like that to get that vacant WBA interim title. You would want him to still get a couple more fights to kind of get back in the groove and then try to get a significant name again. Is that what you're saying?
Kind of, but I suppose the heavyweight, landscape is slightly different because all the belts are kind of, taken up for a long period of time anyway. So even with him, getting this, it makes him probably like a mandatory for Manuel Charr's version. I think he'd destroy Manuel Charr pretty easy. And then you've probably got a good year to 2 year wait to even get a WBA shot. So, maybe picking it up wasn't too bad in hindsight. But I just think he needs to move, kind of slowly, get used to working with Shane McGuigan. Watching some of those videos, Shane was kind of teaching him, kind of peeling back the fundamentals that he hadn't really picked up too well. So, slowly but surely, keep training, get him out there, get him in some other fights. But he's young enough that he can take his time and, he'll still be around when Joshua's gone, Tyson Fury's gone, and the next batch are coming through, like your Hrgovic, your Daniel Dubois, even your Hughie Fury. Hughie Fury's, had a lot of fights against, some very good pedigree opponents, and he's still ridiculously young for a heavyweight as well.
I mean, what do you think about Dubois in terms of, like you mentioned, I completely agree that he's obviously very young and he's still going to be there. Arguably in the middle of his prime in terms of age, when Joshua and Fury and those guys are already kind of on the tail end of their careers, hypothetically speaking. So what, Joe Joyce, obviously the first loss he had of his career last year, Joe Joyce is what, 35 years old. He obviously he's putting the pedal to the gas here, to the gas pedal here, because he's running out of time. But luckily he got that win, so he's in line to, get some significant name, maybe a decent payday. But like you said, Dubois is very young. He still has a lot of years ahead of him. And like I mentioned earlier at the beginning, the investment in him is still ongoing and there's still a lot of time left. I think he could fight. I think he's shown that he could fight, obviously taking that fight against Joe Joyce and stuff like that. Because, were you in I'm trying to remember what the episode that we did just before the Dubois-Joyce fight. And I don't remember if I asked you this or if we talked about it. I'm sure we did. But did you think that was a good matchup? Would you have put Dubois and Joyce matched up like that? Or especially for Dubois being such a young guy and having all that hype behind him?
At the time, obviously, Dubois had just gone through a lot of gimmies, and obviously he needed that step up against Joe Joyce, I think, to get a ranking, kind of solidify himself as one of the main heavyweights, because I know that his father and, his family were all looking for him to either, beat or, equal or got very close to, Mike Tyson's record of being the youngest ever heavyweight. So,
champion, right?
The youngest ever heavyweight champion, of the world. That's something that they were aiming for. But I honestly can't remember at the time. Dubois I think he was kind of like a favorite going into that because of Joe Joyce's very unorthodox style. But the thing is with Joyce, it works. He gets the victories, and that that victory over Dubois was a very, very, very good victory for him, because I think people started to take Joe Joyce a little bit more seriously after that.
What do you think about, ignoring promotional politics? What do you think about a Dubois and an Andy Ruiz matchup?
I think that'd be a good matchup. I don't know whether it would be the matchup now for Dubois. I thought,
you know what? I think Dubois would be. I think I would give him a pretty decent chance at beating Ruiz.
I think the problem that he has, it seems, and I think sometimes he lacks a little bit of confidence and he lacks a little bit of the boxing IQ, Daniel Dubois. I think with Andy Ruiz, he's a little bit more of a natural boxer because he's been doing it from such a young age. So I honestly think Dubois needs to be cooked slowly. I think he needs to improve his boxing IQ, needs to be able to think on his feet.
But I mean, like, I think that's out the window, though, the whole slow cooking here, because I think, especially when he got the Joe Joyce fight and he lost, and now as of this past weekend, he gets the WBA interim heavyweight title. I mean, I think that whole slow. I mean, obviously the heavyweight division is very locked up right now. It's Fury, Wilder, and Joshua. Those are the names that are intertwined at the moment. After Fury and Fury and Wilder fight for the third time next month, then the winner of that fight it'll obviously be that person in Joshua, hypothetically speaking. So, I mean, I think Frank Warren, and maybe for like a lot of other heavyweights, they're just trying to position him to be that next guy when those guys need that next opponent when they're done fighting each other and kind of rotating. And I think that, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that. I think if I was Frank Warren, the guy's young, and those guys are what? Joshua's 30, I think. Fury's 31, 32.
I think so.
Wilder's 34, I think, something like that. So, if I think Frank Warren's looking at it like, well, I want to get this guy a payday, and then I also want my cut as a promoter. And these guys are, a good 7, 8, 9 years older than him. So we all know it's a business. So I think Frank Warren, and maybe Dubois as well, maybe he just wants to get one of those big names. I mean, it's a payday before they get out of the heavyweight division. Because, I mean, who knows? Like, how many years did we go with the Klitschko brothers? They were dominant, but the heavyweight division didn't have the luster that it had in the 80s and the 90s with Tyson, or even when Muhammad Ali was there and Larry Holmes and those guys. And then in the last 6 years, you have your Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, Andy Ruiz pops in there. Daniel Dubois, Joe Joyce, all these guys have decent names. And the heavyweight division is kind of like would you say it's a pick'em division right now just because there's so many significant players? But I think that Frank Warren and Queensberry, they're just trying to get him a fight with with one of these guys before they leave the sport. I mean, that's my take. Because, I mean, obviously if Dubois keeps winning, even if he faces one of these guys and loses, but he keeps beating these other guys they put in front of him, eventually Dubois, as assuming he keeps going in his career and doesn't retire earlier or an unfortunate injury doesn't happen, Dubois is going to should be at the top of the heavyweight division, for years to come, assuming he keeps living up to the hype, the expectations, I guess. I mean, what do you think?
No, exactly. Yeah, you summed it up well. Just, he should be, with the names that we see around now. But obviously, you get these random people that come out of the Olympics that maybe there could be some Russian heavyweight that we don't know about, another Ivan Drago. So, but yeah, of the people we know now, I think everyone's kind of picking, Daniel Dubois to probably be the main man in 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I
mean, who else? I mean, am I missing anybody besides Dubois? And I'm talking about like at his age and where he's at and the hype that he carries that has been put behind him. Who else would be at that similar level with him right now, where you could say, oh yeah, you know what? Dubois and this guy are probably going to be the guys in the next 5 years.
Obviously, Hrgović, Hughie Fury.
Do you think Hughie Fury really, like, legitimately?
He has that kind of negative Fury style that works. And his dad seems to be very old school. He'll just throw him in there. You know, like Fury will probably retire in 5-10 years with a record of something like 45 wins, 13 losses, and, you know, like a very old school mentality of just, I don't know if he's good enough. Let's just stick him in the fight and see, you know, and then a loss isn't a loss. It's a learning experience. So something like that. And if that's the way that, you know, obviously all the Furies are thinking, then, you know, he could learn so much being in fights with, you know, like Pulev and Joseph Parker and stuff like that. You know, he's only really lost to some of the bigger names in the division.
Right.
But the problem he has is he's not, you know, he's not good to watch. He's not going to fill a stadium and stuff like that unless he changes his style. He's got the very similar style that Tyson had when Tyson hit the scene. You know, and it was very negative. You pick up wins on points and stuff like that. But, you know, Tyson ended up becoming that pantomime villain, or some, you know, even now I suppose he's the good guy, which was kind of what put bums on seats, because if you think about a lot of his performances until recently, they're not great. You know, look at the Klitschko performance. You know, when he fought Chisora back in the day, when he fought Martin Rogan, they weren't great to watch.
I mean, assuming, you tell me if you agree with this analogy, assuming Dubois has the same work ethic going forward and, hypothetically speaking, becomes what people expect him to be, high level, top of the game in the heavyweight division. Canelo Alvarez, when he lost to Floyd Mayweather, he was what, 23?
Yeah, he's young. Yeah, really young.
Probably around the same age as Dubois at the moment, you know, give or take maybe a year. And obviously that affected Canelo a lot. You could see it just even right after that fight, post-fight, you know, he was very emotional, and look at what he's become now. I mean, I'm not saying, I don't want people out there to get mad at me or mad at us or whatever. Like, I'm not saying Canelo and Dubois. I'm just talking about like a general example that people could remember. Canelo losing to Mayweather. Could you see Dubois, you know, coming back from that loss, Joe Joyce, and, you know, in 5-6 years being significant? I mean, not Canelo significant. I think that's a stretch. I mean, nobody's compared to Canelo at the moment, but just in general.
I mean, I think he will. The only problem you have with that question is, like, obviously it depends on the mentality of the person.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, looking at Canelo now, he's just consummate professional. You know, as soon as he finishes a fight, he's pretty much back in camp, ticking over. That's why he's as good as he is. You know, like, he's one of those people that doesn't just concentrate on what he's good at. He concentrates on the stuff that he's not good at. He concentrates on his flaws and improves those. And that's why, you know, looking at him now, it's hard to really see any kind of weakness. We obviously just don't know, obviously, Dubois that well. Does he have that mentality? By some of the things that he's done since that loss, you know, changing trainer to now being with McGuigan. Obviously, he has looked at what wasn't working in his camp, or what he feels wasn't working in his camp, you know, and he's done that. So obviously, he's very open-minded. You know, he didn't just, you know, blame it on something else, or, you know, oh, it was a lucky punch. That's the only reason I lost was because he fractured my eye. You know, I was going to go on and win. So you can see that he's obviously a big person. He looks at the wider picture. So
right.
Let's hope so. He seems, you know, he seems to have like everything really. He looks good. You know, he's that Adonis-looking guy. So just an interview, obviously, amazingly well, but he does it in the ring. So
right. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see as time moves forward. Also on that card, another Fury, the family of Furies. Tommy Fury gets the 6th victory of his career over Jordan Grant, who suffers the first professional loss of his career. What do you think about Tommy Fury? What's his potential? He's the actor, right? Is that him? He's also like, or he was like the reality show guy. That's him, right?
Yeah, he was a reality show guy. Obviously, you know, made him huge at the time because he got together, I believe, with somebody else that was on the show. I was over here at the time, so I didn't obviously see what he was on.
That's not what you told me off air.
Right. But he seems very raw. I think I'm right in saying I think he only had 10 amateur fights. So this was kind of a good opponent for him, really, because I think the rumor was he was going in against some guy that was like 0-14. Jake Paul was giving him shit for it, and then the opponent got changed, and he went in with somebody, Jordan Grant, that was actually 2-0 going in, so undefeated. And he was game. He came down in that first round. Grant was just throwing leather and trying to get Tommy out there, probably trying to pick up a big scalp so he can get probably a good payday later down the line. Tommy kind of picked it up in rounds 2, 3, and 4, kind of settled down, and I think won. I think the scorecards were like 4-0, but I think Jordan definitely won the first round, and it was good for him to get in there with somebody that was kind of hitting him back, not just getting in there with like a journeyman that was going to roll over for him. But probably some of the best parts of the night was Big John Fury's interview, kind of just talking crap on Tommy, saying like he came in overweight, he was out in Miami jumping off boats and stuff like that. So you don't angry Big John. So just to see what happens next. Is he going to go down that route of a payday against Jake Paul? You can't really fault him for that, because I'm sure the payday would be amazing. But
I think that fight in the UK is more successful than it is over here.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure Tommy Fury's not here at all, probably.
Yeah, I mean, people would see like, oh, Fury, is he related to Tyson Fury? I mean, I think that's the connection, but I mean, who knows? Maybe that's it. We'll touch on the Paul brothers later. I'm sure people just turned us off because we're talking about them, but they're involved, man. They're involved, and some of these actual professional fighters are engaging with them. So it is what it is. Moving on to this past Sunday, rare Sunday card, and not just like a regular card. This was an event. The 6th of June from the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, Florida, on Showtime pay-per-view. Floyd Mayweather at 44 years old and Logan Paul fight, an 8-round fight. There was no winner announced, even though people are going back and forth on social media saying, oh, so-and-so was knocked out or so-and-so won. Oh, there was no winner announced, so they're both winners. They're both losers. Okay. What'd you think
of the fight?
Yeah. What'd you think about it?
I mean, the fight kind of went, I think, as most people guess. Floyd pretty much just helped him through the 8 rounds. I would imagine, if it had smaller gloves and stuff like that, Floyd probably could have just picked his moment and knocked him out. Maybe not because of the size difference. Like, I'm sure.
The kid, I mean, he's a big kid.
Yeah, I mean,
he's a big kid.
Maybe not because of, obviously Floyd has brittle hands, and there was probably like a 50 or 60 pound weight difference on fight night after Logan Paul had rehydrated. But either way, Floyd held his hand and walked him through 8 rounds. It was an exhibition. There was no winner. It wasn't on his professional record. Floyd legitimately, openly said, like, I just, did a daylight robbery or whatever it was.
He said it, I think he called it something like a
heist,
a legalized bank robbery or something like that. Like, I mean, he's right.
When the guy turns around and tells you blatant to your face, like, I just robbed you of $50 because this was an exhibition where I held his hand and walked him through, is pretty much what he said. It is what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, they're bringing their own fans.
Right.
Whether those fans are going to stay to watch the other fights, I don't know. So it is what it is. Fair play to Floyd. He got paid. Logan Paul got paid.
Yeah, I mean, it was an event. I mean, it's like we talked about before when these YouTubers, these social media stars are fighting. Obviously, hardcore boxing fans, they're not for it. We want to see real fights and stuff like that. But I'm telling you right now, every time these YouTuber fights, especially yesterday or this past Sunday with Mayweather and Paul, I have people who ask, like, who were texting me all the time or calling me like, hey, what do you think about this Mayweather-Paul fight? You don't think the kid's too big? Do you really think he can knock him out? People are reeled in, hook, line, and sinker. Like, they're in it. They're in it because they see all the publicity and they're in it. Like, they were interested. So they Mayweather, like you said, Mayweather tells you straight to your face, like, yeah, it was a legalized bank robbery. He's like, if you guys keep talking about me, I'm going to keep doing it. Like, there was something that Michael Benson, I believe he's a Talk Sport boxing editor, right?
Yeah, like I think for the internet, yeah, and for like social.
Right. He's like the main guy. Shout out to Michael Benson on Twitter. He's always posting like all the news, all the major significant news from around boxing. I believe he posted a video clip of Mayweather. It's about 40, 50 seconds long when Mayweather was talking in the press conference, and kind of pretty much talking about the bank robbery and how, you guys keep talking about me. He's like, even if you talk about me, whether it's good or it's bad, you're still keeping me relevant. I think I might have some of the audio. You tell me if you can hear this, and then give me your reaction.
And they say, well, it's not all about the money. Well, your kids can't eat legacy. Patches on my trunks, that's $30 million alone. So who's really the smartest one in the sport of boxing? If you guys don't want to see me do no exhibitions, don't come. Don't watch. When it comes to legalized bank robbing, I'm the best. I don't care if y'all write good stories. I don't care if y'all write bad stories. At the end of the day, I will always have the last laugh. Damn, I'm writing this story about Floyd. But look at the house I go to. And look at the house he go to. Then all the guys that y'all said was extraordinary, the Canelos and the Pacquiaos, I made them look ordinary. And then when I see it's a chance for me to do a heist, a quick heist, at the end of the day, I'm the smart one. They say, oh, Floyd don't look good like he used to look. My bank account looking better and better each and every day.
Give me your reaction to that, Mike.
It's a good interview, actually. I actually watched the whole 20-minute interview that's on either Boxing Social or IFL TV, and he talks well. Floyd talks well. And he openly admitted, that he took your money and it was an exhibition, and no one was going to win. It is what it is. It's just. I mean, I just kind of wish he'd stop going on about them. I know that's his persona, but the money thing. Because then you get all the young boxers coming through that think they're Floyd, and that's why we don't see the fight.
I think that's already happened, though. Like I think that's already happened.
Yeah, no, it has. Davis and everything's always like,
Devin Haney.
Right. If the money's right, you're like, dude. Say, right, we don't care about that. We just want the fights.
Right. I mean, but like, regardless, if you try to be objective in all of his statements, whatever people think about him, I think the first quote that he said, something along the lines of, legacy doesn't put food on the table or money for my kids or something like that. I mean, he's right. Like, these guys, it's not like these guys have, pensions or retirements. Like, boxing, what the average career is what? Maybe. And we're thinking about like the obviously the big stars, but like most professional boxers don't last how many, like couple years? It's hard. It's a hard sport.
A couple of years, and then they say there's only like a very small percentage of fighters that earn enough money, to live well after they retire. You'll see a lot of them doing construction, starting businesses, shops, bars,
right,
like that, because it's very, very few that earn the type of money that Floyd and Joshua and Tyson Fury. There's,
I think I don't even think you can lump Mayweather into obviously earning the type of money. If you talk about like millions, like in general millions, you can lump him in with Joshua, Canelo, but Mayweather. I mean, on over here in the United States, Forbes magazine, one of the big magazines over here in the United States, listed Mayweather for how many years as the highest paid athlete in the world? A boxer being the highest paid athlete in the world. He was beating out guys like LeBron James, who's the Ronaldo.
Messi, Ronaldo.
Yeah, Messi, Ronaldo. He was beating those guys out as a boxer. And I don't think at any point we ever really saw that. Like nobody with the impact on money, pun intended, that he had, and like you said, he's telling you right to your face. He was just like, he's like, you guys keep talking about me. He's like, it's a heist, he's like, people knew this was an exhibition. There wasn't a winner announced. It was only 8 rounds. You know, what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? Like, as long as the demand is there, they're always going to do it. They're always going to do it. And then after, like, I mean, you don't think that the brother, Jake Paul, who actually looks to have a little bit better skills than his older brother, Logan Paul, you don't think that Mayweather and Jake Paul, now that Jake Paul's been signed up or has a few fights contract with Showtime, you don't think they're going to try to look at him fighting Mayweather to avenge his brother? Regardless of what people think, they're YouTubers, they're social media stars, but Showtime is going to look at it, oh yeah, they're going to make us money, so we don't care. You know, Showtime came after what they saw Triller do, and they're trying to replicate it. You know, look at the commentary team for that. It was Mauro Ranallo, and then those other guys, at least on the Showtime USA television portion. And then it was those guys, they have like their own Showtime show. I think they're called Deezus and Mero. They put them on there to be like Triller. They were trying to replicate what Triller did with the Tyson event. Snoop Dogg and all that stuff. That's what they were trying to do. So, I mean, yeah, you know, as boxing fans, we want to see like competitive fights. You know, we want to see the Pacquiao Spences, the Wilder Furies, and stuff like that. Obviously, those are the ones we want as boxing purists. But these fights are here to stay. As long as they're making money for their platforms, they're going to keep coming. And if the demand is there, they're going to keep coming. I mean, reportedly, I think I saw an early projection saying that it sold about 650,000 pay-per-view buys, or give or take. I don't know if that was including the digital streams or anything like that. But in talking about the pay-per-view buys, it was very unfortunate that Showtime, because Showtime even tweeted it out. I think they sent out a tweet saying, hey, if you had trouble with your stream when you bought it, please reach out to us, click here in order to obtain a refund. How are they going to verify who didn't and who didn't have problems? If you know, people are just going to reach out and just say, oh yeah, I had problems. And what is Showtime going to do? Like, oh no, we saw your signal, it was strong. And people are going to be like, well, you weren't in my house. You know, how are you going to? I was surprised when they put that out. I really was.
I'm sure they'll give him like credits to buy like another pay-per-view or
that tweet said refund. Yeah. That tweet specifically said the word refund. So that's why I was like, oh, they actually said refund. Like there's that definition is clear for that, you know. I'm sure they offered him like, hey, we'll give you a credit for the next event you want to purchase from us, you know, or something like that. But I mean, I don't know. I'd like to see if anybody ever gets a hold of how many people reached out to Showtime, or how many people are reaching out to Showtime to try to get a refund. Because, yeah, I mean, it was unfortunate, but, you know, just kind of going back to the whole point we were making, people are upset. Mayweather-Paul, the big, like the professional boxers are pissed. You know, I saw Regis Prograis tweet something about the fight, you know, right after it. And then I thought about it. I was like, wasn't Regis Prograis on that Triller card a couple months ago? You know, like, well, you weren't complaining then. So I don't know. And then Canelo tweeted like one of those emojis of the person like kind of hitting their head like, oh, this is stupid. That was it. It was just like an emoji. And people are trying to figure out, because there was a football game at that time in the U.S. soccer. I said football for our fans across the pond, between Mexico and the USA. And so people were saying, oh, well, did he do that for that game because Mexico lost? Or did he do it for Mayweather-Paul? And if you look at the timing of the tweet when he did it, it looks like it could have been for Mayweather-Paul and stuff like that. But then you know what happened? Did you see what happened after that? Jake Paul quote tweeted Canelo and like pretty much started egging him on. That's what these guys do. They're going to troll you until they get you in the ring. They're going to keep trolling you. So the more attention you give these guys, they're going to troll you back, because they know how to play the social media game better than any of these fighters. and they're gonna, if they see they can make money with somebody, you don't think these guys like Jake Paul and stuff like that, if Canelo says like, yeah, I'll fight you, you don't think they'll do it?
Well, they'd get hurt fighting Canelo.
Yeah, they get hurt, but they're gonna do it. Like these guys, like they don't care, man. Like I don't know. I know people are upset because they want fighters to show personality and try to elevate their public persona, which I get it. But the best examples we have to compare him to is Mayweather in the last 10, 15 years. He's obviously the primary example, but these guys are here to stay, man. They're not going anywhere. And I think the best we can hope for as hardcore boxing fans is that they continue to have actual professional fights on the undercards, at least, because there's going to be a majority of the fans tuning in for those events are going to be the fans just tuning in for that main event. And there's going to be a minority tuning in just for the actual boxing fights. Maybe they're not competitive. I don't know, but I'm telling you, man, people talk about it. They're interested. But let me ask you this before we move on to the undercards on this Showtime pay-per-view card. Do you really think now that we've had all these, a good amount in the last 2-3 years, we've had a lot of these YouTuber fights, social media fights, and people, these promoters and all these people say, oh, well, we're going to reach a new audience. We're going to reach new fans. And hopefully a percentage of those fans who watch this event stay and they start watching boxing, and we keep those they become hardcore fans and start consuming the sport of boxing. If you ask me, I don't think that's working. I mean, what do you think?
I don't think so. Boxing's not a hidden sport like the UFC. When the UFC was coming around, and you may stumble across it and be like, what the hell's this? You're watching it, you're like, mixed martial arts, then you start watching it, you're like, oh, I like this. Boxing's been around for years, hundreds of years. So I don't see that, like somebody that loves YouTube and computer games and stuff like that is just going to watch a Logan Paul fight and then suddenly be like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like, I'm going to stay in every weekend and watch boxing like us. It's may get the odd, very small percentage that'll, stick around and watch it. And even then, I'm sure it'd be casual fights like most people, most people I work with. And, my brother, people like that, they're what we would class as casual fans. They just tune in for the big ones where but they're not going to be watching small top rank cards or, Golden Boy shows at the Belasco like us. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there'll be a stat somewhere that says whether we're right or wrong. But in my opinion, the people that I speak to at work that bring this up and stuff like that, they're not going to be watching Shakur Stevenson next week.
Yeah, of course not. And that's just the truth. It's not that people shouldn't watch Shakur Stevenson. Like, he's obviously a great fighter, but you have to. That's how mass media works. Advertising. You have to reel people in with something that they're interested in. It's Mayweather and the Paul brothers have a large public persona. The general public, especially Mayweather, even the Paul brothers to an extent now, they know who they are. The Paul brothers reached a new audience with coming into boxing. They did. Because now all these people who didn't know who they were before know who they are. I mean, I had heard of them in the past. My nephews and stuff like that, and my nieces would talk about him over the years, and I was like, I don't know who that is. It's some kid, on YouTube. Obviously he's doing well. He's making a lot of money. But it wasn't until he came into the boxing world and he was on DAZN and all that stuff, where, well, now I know a lot more about him because a lot more stuff is being written about him in the boxing circles. So, it is what it is, but these events are here to stay. As long as they keep making money, if it makes money, it makes sense. I don't know where I got that from. I feel like I got that from somewhere. I feel like Mayweather might have said that, but who knows? But also on that card, surprising a surprising decision over here. Luis Arias gets the split decision win over Jarrett Swift Hurd, who suffers the second loss of his career.
I called it.
I know Jarrett Hurd. I think they said his father had just passed away, so I think he was affected mentally, anything like that. But I mean, what's going on here, man? Like Hurd, a year or 2 years ago was a monster. You know, he was a monster at 154. I mean, what happened here? You know, what do you think of the matchup? And then what's your take on Hurd in general?
You know, I had a feeling that, you know, Arias may win this. You know, the stuff coming out of the gym was that he looked good. You know, mentally he looked, you know, really, 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 really well after those losses. You know, I saw him getting interviewed on IFL and Oxford Boxing Social. He looked happy. He looked like he looked confident. And then I just thought his style against Jarrett Hurd's style, because if you remember, Hurd usually just walk you down, kind of like a voice, and he would just walk you down constantly to the point where you were just so tired you couldn't get away from him. You were hitting him, but he was always so big and rigid and rough that
he should have been called the Juggernaut.
He should have done, really. And then obviously now, you know, with him moving up in weight and stuff like that, I just don't know whether that's going to be good enough, you know, because people are now going to be more his size, because I think he was just lucky because he was young and the genes that he had that he could boil down to, what was it, 154 he used to fight at?
Right.
And
he was big for 154.
Oh, he's enormous. Absolutely enormous.
He's a big guy.
You know, but in terms of like boxing IQ and, you know, the talent that he has as a boxer, and it's never really there. Honestly, he was never really there. Just the fact he was just so big. It was the way he used to just do it, and he just club people to death. They'd be so tired from trying to get away from him from all of these rounds that he would eventually just wear them down and knock them out.
Do you think that mentally, especially after that first loss, because the first loss was against Julian Williams?
I think it was Julian Williams, and then obviously
J-Rock? Was it? Maybe I'm drawing a blank here, but I don't know why Julian Williams popped into my head. But do you think from a mental standpoint, after he took that loss, because he was the favorite going into that fight, do you think it just, you know, obviously this past weekend, his father died, and I'm sure that didn't help his mental state, and being in the ring, it's hard to focus, you know, I'm sure that happened. But you know, he really, like you said, like he really hasn't really been the same since his first loss. And he just walked you down, like you mentioned. He walked you down. He came forward, like Joe Joyce. I don't know, man. I think I'm going out on a limb here. I think I say given the next 2 years, he might retire. I think so. I mean,
I could see because he faded away, you know, after those losses. You know, he was gone for a period of time, and then, you know, came back picked up a win against Francisco Santana. You know, he's still got the name recognition of, obviously, you know, being an ex-world champion that he can sell, you know, if he wants to kind of, you know, make an exit from the game, pick up a few more paychecks. But I would say, you know, just come back, get a few wins, get the confidence back, and then obviously just kind of pick your opponents really well, because I think, you know, he has got some great victories on there. If you look, Austin Trout, Erislandy Lara, in my opinion, I'd have thought Lara would have been all wrong for Hurd, because I'd have thought Lara would have just kind of like boxed him from the outside, but
he just ran through him, like you mentioned. Like he just went right through him.
I was actually ringside for that in Vegas,
Mandalay Bay,
Hard Rock. It was that was an outstanding performance from her that night. Honestly, was at the minute that would be the outstanding victory on his resume. So, you know, I think we'll see him again back to the drawing board for a little bit, and then come back out, and then onwards and upwards for Arias. Great victory, you know, for him, and puts him up there really with some of the probably the bigger names in that division, because I'm sure a lot of them,
unless they try to do a rematch.
Yeah, they might want to do a rematch, yeah. But if you were Arias, I would try to step away, go somewhere else.
I'm sure he will, but
bigger fish to fry, because I'm sure some of the people with his record would maybe maybe mistakenly think that he would be easy fry.
Right. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? But the scores for this matchup were 94 to 94, 95 to 94 for Hurd. And then 96-93 and 97-93 for Arias. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how they both turn out. Obviously, Arias, it's the biggest win of his career, I would say. The most significant name. So we'll see how they go forward. Rounding off this card, Badu Jack gets the 4th round TKO over Dervin Colina. Colina was actually a substituted opponent for Jean Pascal, who popped not only once, but 4 different times, reportedly, at least from what we've seen in the reports, for banned substances. I mean, when that happened, especially after the first one, or I think they reported that he popped for 2 or however many it was, maybe it was 3 right away. I knew it was like, oh, that's over. That's over. Because I thought that would have been a pretty decent matchup. Like, because I think this is the second time they fought, right?
Yeah, the first matchup was amazing. And Pascal, obviously now we know why, but, you know, he was in the latter part of his career. But he looked great. Looked really, really good. Obviously, you know, due to the, you know, performance-enhancing substances that he's obviously been using. But, yeah, I've always been a fan of Pascal. I like his style. He's got a very fan-friendly style, I always thought.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see. I think we talked about it last week. I don't know if we talked about it on the show or just off air, but Badu Jack always seems to find a way onto these Mayweather cards. You know, like the Mayweather must really like him. Leonard Ellerby, they must really be big fans of his, because literally, if you look back on all the cards, Mayweather, McGregor, all these guys, like Badu Jack always has a spot on those cards. It's pretty crazy, but hey, if it works out for him, it works out for him. But you know, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Moving on, fight previews. This upcoming Saturday, the 12th of June, from the Virgin Hotels in Las Vegas, Nevada, on ESPN Plus. The Virgin Hotels is the old Hard Rock, right?
Yep, yeah. Same place where they just had the Josh Taylor fight.
Right. That's so the Hard Rock Hotel is no more, and now it's the Virgin Hotels. Shakur Stevenson, 15-0, goes up against Jeremiah Nakatilia. Hopefully I said that right, for the WBO interim super featherweight title. Interim. Isn't Valdez the WBO super featherweight champion?
Valdez, yeah.
How is this for an interim title when Valdez literally just fought? I don't understand that. I thought isn't that typically the rules of, well, I'm saying that like the sanctioning bodies stick to their rules, but isn't generally how it's supposed to work? Like, okay, well, we're going to put an interim champion because the actual champion hasn't defended it or is injured and can't defend it during the time frame right now. So we're going to have an interim champion in the meantime. Isn't that usually how it's supposed to work?
That's how you would describe the word interim, right?
I mean, I guess, but you know, what do you think about this matchup? Because obviously Stevenson's the favorite, and I would assume that the plan is for him to fight Oscar Valdez sometime after this fight, maybe by the end of the year.
Yeah, I would hope so. It'd be a good fight. Obviously, you know, not much is known about his opponent. Jeremiah comes in obviously heavy-handed, 21 victories, 17 by KO. So obviously, you know, he can punch quite easily. The biggest fight that he's ever been in. So it'd be interesting to see is the lights and glamour and glitz of Vegas going to be too much for him, or are we going to get one of the the Mexican Eddie Hearn undercard shocks that we keep getting? I know this guy's from Nambia, but I'm using it for an example. You know, the Josh Warrington getting beaten, and several other guys. It would be interesting, but I would assume unless Shakur comes in and takes him lightly, Shakur should really win. But I think it's probably fair of us to say that we keep complaining about like Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney not fighting some names. Shakur as well, really.
Yeah. Obviously.
I think he's in the kind of in the same boat. hopefully this is just one to get him highly ranked by the WBO, which he already should be because he was the WBO champion at the weight below. So hopefully this is just kind of more of a tick over before we see a fight against Oscar Valdez or another big name later down the line.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And you got to look at it this way. Top Rank is very good about their matchmaking. When they have two world championship level fighters or world champions or what have you in a certain division and they both have them signed, they're going to do what they can to keep them in matchups that they should be able to win until they meet together in a real significant fight and make money. Or should be making money. I think that was a plan with Shakur Stevenson ever since he moved up to 130 pounds, is to have him face the winner of Burchelt Valdez, which is now Valdez.
I think it's Jamel Herring, isn't it?
Is it Jamel Herring? Oh yeah.
After the Frampton one, because obviously Valdez changed.
Wait, so Jamel Herring has a WBO?
Yeah.
So Valdez has the WBC. And the WBA?
Just the WBC, according to BoxRec.
Are you sure? I thought he had...
He was WBO, then he moved up.
That's what it was. Okay, now I'm confused. Okay, he was WBO at 126. He moved up. He vacated it, and then he fought Burchelt for the WBC. Oh, okay, now it makes sense. You see, I get so confused here. Because the WBO is obviously very associated with Top Rank. So I feel like these guys all have that same title several times throughout, 2 or 3 divisions. But you're right, though. The plan is, my mistake, is Shakur Stevenson, assuming he wins this upcoming weekend, to face Jamel Herring. And I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people, especially on boxing Twitter, would be pulling for Jamel Herring. Jamel Herring, I think we could categorize him as the most social world champion on Twitter. Is that accurate to say? What do you think?
Yeah, he's definitely Mr. Nice Guy.
I wouldn't even call it Mr. Nice Guy. I mean, he's a nice guy, but I'm talking about like he interacts with people. He interacts with just regular fans and stuff like that. And, as a world champion, you're just like, oh, wow, this guy's not only is he a professional fighter, he's a world champion. And he's just right there in the Twitter comments, responding to people. I think that's cool because I obviously people like that. They appreciate that. But if the plan is to have him go up against Stevenson by the end of the year, that's going to be a tough fight. It's going to be a tough fight for him. Because Stevenson's no joke. The kid can fight. But Jamel Herring has a lot of heart. I think he showed that especially in the last fight against Frampton, and then when he won the title against Ito. Jamel Herring is one of those guys that's been proving all the doubters wrong since he won that title. So we'll see. But we'll see. I mean, what would you think about a potential Stevenson Herring fight?
He would need to really do a very similar performance to when he fought Carl. Just work that jab a lot, so much that Stevenson couldn't come in. But Stevenson is very good. You can see he's young, but he's very calm in the ring. Great boxing IQ. Can kind of mimic quite a few different styles. If you gun to my head, I mean, I'd go Shakur Stevenson for the win.
Don't they both train with Crawford in his camp? I know Stevenson. He's not trained by Bomac, right? But they all train together.
Yeah, I think he goes there for sparring and stuff like that. And obviously, there's been a few kind of like, videos of Shakur kind of giving Jamel stick about the potential upcoming fight and stuff like that, starting like a little bit of beef. I assume it's all tongue in cheek. But yeah, I mean, it would be a great matchup. Just a clash of styles, and also. I would imagine Jamel would be, significantly bigger and also
right
have a substantial reach advantage for that fight. So it would be a really good crisscross of different styles.
Yeah, but we'll see. Also on that card, Jose Pedraza. Jose Pedraza is always on these top ranked cards. He's always getting something, huh? He's been on the PBC cards too, and Tank Davis has a win over him. But Pedraza always feel like he's doing okay. He's one of those like I mean, I would call him now maybe a journeyman. That he still gets these significant fights just because I think he was I don't know if he was a silver medalist or gold medalist in the Olympics or something. I know he has some accolades that were impressive, and it looks good on a fighter's resume. But Jose Pedraza, 28-3, goes up against Julian Rodriguez. What do you think? The undefeated, actually, Julian Rodriguez, 21-0. What do you think about this matchup?
Like you say, maybe Top Rank are now saying that Pedraza is kind of over the hill because for him, this is he's going in with obviously an unbeaten, very fancied up-and-coming fighter. So a Top Rank kind of telling him now that you're at that kind of gatekeeper stage.
Right.
But Pedraza on his night can put in those victories. So this would be a great victory for Rodriguez if he could manage to do it. And it's also, I think, that time in Pedraza's career where, it's his last chance, really, if he's going to make anything. So it'd be interesting. Definitely a great win for Rodriguez if he can get it. And it'd be great to see how much Pedraza has in the tank because I always enjoy watching him. He's good. His nickname, Sniper, kind of really describes his style.
Right. Yeah, I'm a fan of Pedraza. I mean, obviously, he's definitely at the tail end of his career, but he's still getting some decent spots on some cards here. And Rodriguez of Bergen County, New Jersey. What does it say here? He turned pro in 2013 following a storied amateur career that included a 2013 National Golden Gloves title and victories over the likes of former world champion Robert Easter Jr. He is 5-0 with four knockouts since returning from a nearly 2-year layoff in July 2019, including a first-round knockout last August over the previously undefeated Anthony Lariano. I mean, I think the kid, this is his moment right here, or at least his next moment. But this is something where people are going to be like, "Oh wow, Pedraza." I mean, like, would you categorize Pedraza now as? Does he still look good on a resume, even though it's been a few years where he's kind of been the B side and they put him in there because he looked good on a resume and he's beatable? Is he past that? I mean, would it still look good on a resume?
I think so. At the minute, if he carries on and gets to the point where he's legitimately just becoming like a gatekeeper, and for example, like if he gets to the point where he's like a Gamboa, if Gamboa keeps getting smoked, he's going to get to the point where, like, you look at the resume and like, oh, he fought Gamboa. Like, Gamboa was good a while ago, but towards the end of his career, everyone was beating him.
Yeah.
It just really depends if Pedraza takes a fourth loss and retires, or if it gets to the point where a few years from now Pedraza's like 28 wins and 11 losses, then yeah, it kind of dilutes that name on the resume.
Right. Yeah. We'll see. But interesting matchup. Definitely interesting matchup. Also, this upcoming weekend from the Eagles Community Arena in Newcastle on DAZN, Louis Ritson, 21-1, goes up against Jeremias Nicholas Ponce, undefeated as well, 27-0. What do you think about this matchup?
Untested for Ponce, 27 victories, 17 by KO. Bit of a wild card, kind of like we touched on before. Eddie's picked a few wrong ones or right ones, depending on how you look at it, to be opponents. Obviously, Ritson had that very, very, very disputed victory over Vasquez, where he was pretty much just giving it when Vasquez clearly won most of the rounds by boxing from the outside. So he really needs to, get in there and kind of stamp his authority. But looking at from what I've seen so far of Ponce, definitely more of Louis Ritson style, just because he's kind of like very slow feet, kind of like likes to walk you down. Ponce kind of does something very similar. Ritson really is troubled by people that, stick and move and, box more than anything else. So it's definitely, in terms of style, it's more of a favorable matchup for Ritson.
Also on that card, friend of the show, former guest on the last round, Thomas Patrick Ward goes up against Eddie Valencia Mercado. What do you think about this matchup?
Should be really more of a tick-over fight, just to get, Thomas Patrick Ward out, really, whilst he's kind of waiting for his shot at the WBO title. So I would imagine at some point this year, we'll see him in there with Stephen Fulton. But I think Fulton's trying to obviously unify at the minute. And then obviously at some point later down the line, the WBO is going to have to call for the mandatory. So I'm sure Thomas Patrick Ward's probably just going to be ticking over, and he's not going to be taking anything crazy because he doesn't want to lose that mandatory spot.
Right. Yeah, definitely going to be taken along the ride very carefully. News and notes section of this episode of The Last Round. Claressa Shields is making her MMA debut finally this week on the Professional Fighting League, PFL, in Atlantic City, New Jersey. The bout will not be a part of the PFL lightweight regular season, but a one-off fight this Thursday on ESPN Plus. So if you're listening to this before Thursday night this week, you obviously can still catch it. If you're listening to it after, sorry, you missed it. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of publicity for this fight. It was already very intriguing to a lot of people because she was going to MMA, after becoming a multi-division world champion in boxing over here on the female side, and just pretty much beating everybody, being the pound for pound best female fighter in the world.
That's not true.
Well, Katie Taylor, you're a fan. That's right. To you. But I mean, there's just why is it on a Thursday?
Strange. Yeah. When I was doing the notes today, I was very surprised to see it's on a Thursday behind a paywall. It's only $5 a month, but it's still behind a paywall on ESPN Plus. Hasn't really been advertised at all. I went on to Claressa's Twitter and social media today. Even Claressa's not as much as you'd expect to be really, really, throwing it out there. Maybe because it's kind of like a warm-up fight just to test the water. They didn't want too many eyes on it because she's only really been training in, mixed martial arts for a very short period of time. I know she's obviously going in there with Brittany Elkin, who's 3 wins and 6 losses, but it's a lot to learn. She can strike, in obviously a boxing stance, but turning that all to MMA is completely different. You've got kicks coming at you, years and years of wrestling, years and years of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's not something you can just really take up overnight. And I'm sure like an MMA fighter coming into boxing or a boxer going into, MMA, I'm sure there's probably a lot of people that want to beat her, because they just want to say to yourself, you can't just come in here and take up mixed martial arts in less than a year and think that you're going to win the PFL tournament and become a champion. Same as, an MMA fighter turn into boxing. I'm sure a lot of the boxing hardcore would be like, let's kick this dude's face in, You can't just take it and do that. So it's going to be interesting to see what the opponents are like. Are they going to just kind of roll over and let her win because it's Claressa Shields and they've kind of been paid a decent amount under the table to, just let this roller coaster go?
Maybe.
It'll be definitely be interesting. I'm actually off on Thursday, so I have ESPN Plus, so I'll probably tune in.
Yeah, I mean, it's intriguing. I still don't know why it's on Thursday. I'm assuming there's something going on this weekend that is an event that overshadows them. Definitely overshadows them. But on a Thursday, I think that's very, very strange. I mean, we'll see. We'll see it. Like I said, it's only a one-off fight. So we'll see if she decides to come back. Do you think that she and her team maybe approached Bellator and UFC before they even signed with the PFL? Or do you think that they didn't reach out to any of them and the PFL just reached out and they struck a deal? I feel like she might have reached out or sent fillers to the UFC and Bellator and they didn't respond, or they were opposed to the idea.
No, I would imagine if it was her that made the decision to reach out, I'm sure they probably reached out to all of them. And I'm sure she was probably hoping someone like the UFC would, reach out to her because of how, good or bad she is in the social media world, depending on how you look at it. But I think after the, what's his name again? The WWE fighter that went to UFC?
Brock Lesnar?
The small guy who got smoked.
CM Punk.
Yeah, I'm sure that after that, Dana White was probably thinking to himself, I don't know whether we really need any more of these gimmicks coming over. So I'm sure he's probably got his eye on it. You know, if she does really well in the PFL and she's also in the same camp as John Jones and Holly Holm, I'm sure if she gets to a very good standard or has a very good following,
Maybe.
I'm sure the UFC would pick her up. But the PFL seems to, I don't know who funds it, but they seem to do all these tournaments where the winner wins like $1 million. So they're obviously bankrolled by somebody. And I'm sure that Claressa probably saw, you know, if I, you know, learn the trade, have a few fights, and then, you know, enter in this tournament and, you know, somehow win, then boom, she's got $1 million in the old back burner. So
yeah, maybe. I definitely gotta ask our friend of the show, Ed Carbajal at Carbazel on Twitter. He's writes for SureDog.com, My MMA News, and some other sites. He's definitely one of the most knowledgeable, if not the most knowledgeable guy in the MMA world that I know. So I'm sure once I ask him, like, hey man, who runs the PFL? Where are they getting their funding? He would know right away. So I'll make sure to find that out. But we'll see. Like you said, we'll see how it turns out, see what she does, see how she looks, her technique and all that stuff. And kind of go from there. I mean, let's see if she signs another deal. Like, you know, she's obviously finding somebody with a losing record, 3-6. So they're hoping they're making it, they're trying to make it as a perfect storm as possible for her to win. You know, kind of boost her confidence. And then, I mean, I'm sure like anybody, her goal, if she wants to continue MMA fighting, is to get a fight with the UFC, because the UFC is the biggest player in town. So, but you know, you compare them to the WWE professional wrestler CM Punk. You know, he obviously wasn't great in his, I think he fought twice with them and it wasn't great, but he brought over a lot of money. Like there was a lot of professional wrestling fans who tuned in just to watch him. So I don't think if you don't have a following like that you can bring over, that's the only reason Dana White did it, is because he had a following. You know, he was able to move the needle a little bit on the pay-per-view buys. Claressa Shields is not moving the needle. So was it 3,000 buys on her own pay-per-view in boxing? So reportedly, I mean, who knows? Who knows what it was? But that was what number that was being floated around. But I mean, we'll see. We'll see how she does. It's intriguing. It's on ESPN Plus on a Thursday. I mean, the good thing about ESPN Plus is that the fight still stays on there. So even if you miss it, you can go back and watch it. What is it? $5 a month here in the United States. I don't know how much it is in the UK. I'm sure it's less than that. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. You know, I'm sure there'll be clips on Thursday night of her on Twitter. See how she does, and then people are just going to go back and forth and see what happens. Rounding off the show, Roy Jones Jr., the former pound-for-pound best fighter in the world and the former staple of the HBO boxing commentary team of the last, 15, 20 years or so. He might be coming back. He might be coming back in another exhibition fight. I know he just fought Mike Tyson on Triller. But there's a reported deal, this is just a report at the moment, that he might make some type of exhibition fight against Carl Froch. What do you think about that?
It was funny because it came up in conversation during the Canelo week. When they had the kind of the fight week, they had Carl Froch on it several times and Roy Jones on IFL and Boxing Social several times. And it got brought up. I think Carl Froch might have said that he'd heard rumors or people had reached out to him inquiring about that. And I think Roy Jones had said something derogatory about Carl Froch or whatever. And it would be interesting because I don't Carl Froch from seeing him on TV takes himself very seriously. So I do wonder whether Carl Froch could go into like an exhibition with Roy Jones and not really go for kind of like the knockout or, go to, make sure that he wins and stuff like that, because he still seems like he's very, very, very competitive. Keeps himself in great shape. Doesn't look much different from when he was...
he really doesn't look that much different.
Yeah, right. From when he was a pro. So I love both of them. I loved Carl Froch growing up. He was kind of in the era when I started watching a lot of boxing,
80,000 fans at...
Right.
What was it? Was it Wembley?
Yeah, that was Wembley. It was funny you say that, because I was on YouTube today, and when one of the videos finished, the next one was is it Behind the Gloves or whatever it's called, where they do this the sit down, the face off on Sky Sports. I can't remember what it's called, and it was Cal Froch against George Groves for the second one. And, they would just start talking shit back and forth. It's funny that kind of came up.
80,000 fans at Wembley Stadium. That's the 15 minutes of fame right there. That was the moment of his career right there. I think that's always funny when he brings it up. They both bring it up. It's hilarious. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like I said, kind of reiterates the point I was making at the beginning of the episode with the Mayweather-Paul thing. These novelty fights, these social media fights, these old school guys who are coming back to get like the nostalgia buys of these pay-per-views, they're here, man. They're here, and they're going to, as long as they keep getting attention and they keep making money for these platforms, they're going to stay. They're going to stay. And like I said, I don't think any of these fans, any of these casual fans who are tuning in, especially for these social media guys, they're not staying. They're not staying for the actual boxing fights that we appreciate. They're not staying. But you make money for the platform, Showtime, DAZN, Triller. It is what it is, and and these YouTube channels, the YouTube boxing channels, they do well. They do well in terms of statistics when they go and cover these events. They do. So
Rob Tebbett said that a normal interview, if it does like 100 views per minute after he's uploaded it, you can see it's going to be a good seller. He was saying when they did the second one at the Staples Center, KSI Logan Paul 2, they were doing 1,500 views a minute.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. But yeah, see, it's there's your evidence right there. That's why these fights, these events keep happening. That's why they keep happening, because of stuff like that. But once again, guys, we appreciate you guys listening to this week's episode of The Last Round. Don't forget that we have merchandise available on Fit Warrior brand. We have some sweaters and some t-shirts available. Get on there, buy the shirt, buy the sweater. Mike, go ahead and let them know before we sign off where they can find us on the socials.
On the socials, we are at The Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter, and be sure to join us next week. We'll be previewing the Jamel Charlo against Juan Montiel, and also Nana Inoue against Michael Dasmarinis. The monster is back on Top Rank on ESPN. So from my co-host Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.